Hello everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be going over the next mission guide. Today we'll be doing Refinery. Now this one's going to be a little bit longer as it's much more involved than simply mining some morkite or ripping eggs out of the wall. So we're actually going to go over some gameplay before we get into the real mission. But without further ado, let's hop into the game and take a look at what the Miner's Manual has to say about on-site refining. I have to say that Refinery is probably the most oversimplified mission in the entire Miner's Manual, but let's go through it anyways. First of all, locate the wells. Once the rig lands, all you have to do is drop pump jacks and string out the pipe. So obviously the first step in that is locating the wells. Step 2, make the connection. Either before or after you drop the pump jacks, run out the pipe and connect them to the place on top of the well. Once it's connected, you have to go along every segment and build out the pipe. Once all 3 pipelines are built all the way out, start the refining process, and whenever the pipelines break, repair them to continue the process. And for some reason, unlisted in this entry in the Miner's Manual, once the refining is completed, press the button and then wait for the drop pod, and then get to the drop pod. We are going to do something a little bit different for Refinery. Rather than just running through the mission and explaining as I go, we're going to do what I would call a dry run first, so I can teach you some of the mechanics and tips and tricks of Refinery. Once the refinery lands and unpacks itself, try to locate the nearest pump jack location. You can see this by the black well, the speckled black rock scattered around it, and most obviously, the plume of fire and the distinct sound that it makes. Whenever you happen upon a well, you want to try to drop the pump jack on it as soon as possible. This is for a few reasons. The well itself will show up on the terrain scanner once you get close to it, but if you place the pump jack will be visible through walls simply by using the laser pointer. This can make it much easier for drillers to drill directly to it, or just your team to tell where the pump jacks are at a glance. Now let's go over the mechanics of the pipelines now. There's a few disqualifying factors that can make pipelines unplaceable. You can either make them too steep, meaning they are going too vertically up or down. They can be invalid for uneven terrain, meaning that the slope that you're trying to place them on is far too steep. You can make them too long. The maximum length a single segment of pipe can be is 9.0 meters, so anything longer than that will be unplaceable. And finally, the last invalidating condition is blocked. So if you're trying to build a pipeline directly to a solid wall, it's not going to work out. However, a pipeline can terraform terrain that might be slightly in the way of it. This will allow you to always surf pipelines that are built through small tunnels. For example, if I cut into this rock face here and then place the pipe in the middle of it, it will terraform the area around it so that you will always have room to move on top of the pipeline. This is less of an issue with driller tunnels as they're already big enough to walk through, but if it's a hand-dug tunnel by something like a scout or a gunner, then the pipeline terraforming effect can be extremely useful. So once you manage to place your pipeline far enough out and get close to the pump jack, whenever you try to install the final link, you'll see that it snaps automatically to the pump jack. Once this is done, you need to go back and stretch out the pipeline. This can be done by returning to the first linkage wherever the pipeline is visibly not built, and also where the floating wrench icon is. In solo you can have Bosco build pipelines for you, and you can double build with him to make it even faster. Worth noting that Bosco builds pipelines even faster than you by himself, so it's a good idea to have Bosco building pipelines while you're placing another one. Once a pipeline is completed, the LEDs on the pipe itself will turn green. This is physically distinguishable from a normal pipeline that is not completed, which has white or non-illuminated lights. And if you're ever unsatisfied with the placement of an incomplete pipe, you can always break it with any melee attack. Additionally, you can connect a pipeline to a pump jack even before it's placed. So if you do find yourself rapidly stringing out a pipe and the pump jack isn't there yet, feel free to just go ahead and hook it up. Additionally, you can build the pipeline all the way out before the pump jack has even landed, meaning that whenever the pump jack does land, it will instantly connect and be ready to go. So that's the basics of connecting pipelines to pump jacks. Once you connect all 3 pipelines to pump jacks and fully stretch out the pipes, you'll be able to start the refining process. This can be done by pressing the button on the refinery. This is a good time to finish any extra secondaries or anything else that you might see lying around. However, just know that spawns are not going to stop from this point on in the mission, so you should definitely do machine events before this point in time. Eventually the pipelines will jam. This will require you to go out to the pipelines and fix the broken segments. The broken segments are easily visible by the giant light coming out of them, spraying liquid morkite. Additionally, these broken linkages will be visible on the terrain scanner. You can tell if a pipeline has any broken segments by the LEDs turning red instead of green. Additionally, if you're still confused on which pipeline has a break on it, you can figure this out by looking at the number on the side and how it corresponds with the number in the HUD in the top right. So if you're looking at pipeline 3 and you see that pipeline 3 has a break, you'll know that somewhere along that line there's a discrepancy that you need to fix. Much like building pipes, Bosco can also repair pipes, or you can just leave him to fight off the bugs that are coming to chew on the pipelines. Make no mistakes, the bugs themselves do not break the pipelines. This is simply a tricky visual effect. The bugs are attracted to the broken pipelines, not the other way around. The frequency and quantity of breaks in the pipelines does scale with the amount of players in the game, so in solo it's entirely possible to have one pipeline break in 1 or 2 places. However, in a 4-player game, you should fully expect all 3 pipelines to break in 2 places. Very rarely in a 4-player game will all 3 pipelines break, and only one of them will have 1 break instead of 2. Furthermore, the maximum amount of breaks any one pipe can have is 2, so if you ever repair 2 links on one pipeline, you can immediately move on to the next, as it's impossible for it to ever have more than 2 breaks. Next, let's go over the classes that are strongest for Refinery. The 2 classes of major note when we want to talk about high skill in Refinery is Driller and Engineer. First of all, Driller. Very simply, if the pump jack is in a side tunnel, through a wall, in a different cave, you can simply stand on the mine head and drill a tunnel directly to that pump jack. And on the other side of the spectrum, the Engineer fills the opposite purpose. If you need to move a pipeline uphill through a large and open area, you can simply stick platforms on the edge of any wall, or any other cave features that jut out into the middle of the room, allowing you to very efficiently stretch pipelines at the maximum length up to where they need to go. And by no means are Scout and Gunner incapable of soloing a refinery. However, whenever you get into that cave all on your own and the pump jack is 50 feet directly above the refinery, you can certainly struggle having to hand dig a tunnel all the way up to it while fighting the bugs. Now I know that was quite a bit of information, but just try to recognize some of the things that you might remember from your own gameplay or that I just mentioned over the course of the next mission. But without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the build and get started on our real refinery mission. So, pretty average build for me. There's the perks, cycle overload shotgun, hyper propellant, pickaxe, turrets, platform gun, proximity mines, and normal armor. Alright, a real refinery now. As usual with these mission playthroughs, I'll be leaving the video largely unedited and just interjecting commentary wherever it feels appropriate. So much like egg missions, whenever you land in a refinery, it's usually a pretty heavy swarm as every single ambient spawn in the map is going to be aggroing on you at the same time, as well as any spitballers or other stationary cave threats like leeches. Unfortunately, this refinery spawned with gunk seeds. This can be particularly troublesome considering that you don't have a mule, so having to carry them all back one by one can be a little time consuming, especially in solo. However, this cave is very small and thankfully very flat, so it's not too much of an issue. As soon as I get the bugs off of me, I'm going to start running out the pipelines. And I made a slight misplay here in that I could have had Bosco building the pipeline as I was running it out, but that's a small time save. Basically, from this moment on, Bosco is going to be building pipes non-stop. While Bosco's building the first pipe, I'm going to be running out the second one, and at the same time I'm trying to scout out and find where the third pump jack is. Starting to have ambient waves spawning in on us, so we're going to have to deal with those before we can move on. And at all times I'm trying to move gunk seeds back towards the mine head, even if I'm not getting them in right away. Now that we've got Bosco building the second pipe, we'll go ahead and run out the third. Cleaning up my workspace just a little bit so I'm not taking chip damage from radiation. And if you aren't already aware, spam depositing is faster on anything but a mule, which has become one of my favorite techs after learning that it sends Reddit into a full-blown nuclear meltdown. Trying to do some sidebar stuff while Bosco is building pipelines, picking up all the loose minerals, killing off some loot bugs, and getting some of our gunk seeds. Until the pump sequence is started, all swarms are time-based, so time really is of the essence here. However, you're usually going to have to fight at least one swarm before you're able to set up pipelines, maybe two if you're unlucky and have bad cave generation. So realistically, we're right on schedule right now. Trying to continue to be productive while fighting the swarm, however this can be a little difficult at times. And now that all our pipelines are done, we can get started with the pump sequence. Usually the bugs that spawn while pumping isn't too much when stacked with a normal swarm, so in my personal experience I wouldn't worry too much about waiting for a swarm to stop before starting the pump sequence. Speed is king after all. Additionally, once you start the pump sequence, the swarms are going to be going at a non-stop pace, so the sooner you get into that, the better. And that you don't have to worry about swarm timers or anything anymore, you just know that you're on rails to get to the end of the mission. There's our first pipe break. I'm going to get Bosco on repairs right away. Try to find a pipe linkage for myself that has the fewest bugs on it. All while taking advantage of the fact that the bugs are being distracted by another broken pipe link. For example, that's why I threw that proxy mine on it. More bugs are going to continue to be attracted to it and hopefully be killed by the mine. Falling behind pretty heavily on gunk seeds in comparison to the main objective, so I'm going to try to double down on that now. I'll go ahead and say it again, if I did have a different secondary objective other than gunk seeds, it wouldn't be nearly this difficult, so this is kind of an outlier as far as secondaries go on refineries. This is why most people consider gunk seeds to be the worst secondary in the game, just because it can take so long to actually focus on it, and the fact that you can't fit the entire secondary objective into your pocket, like something like Apoca Blooms. Before I do fully repair this pipeline, I want to kill all the bugs off of it, using the most ammo efficient ways I can. And once they're out of the way, I'll go ahead and fully repair it. Have Bosco fly out and repair that linkage while I clean up the rest of these loose minerals. And just finish up crossing our I's and dotting our T's and getting this mission ready to wrap up. And just a couple more things before we wrap it up. As you probably saw intermittently, that jumping while riding along a pipeline and re-grabbing the pipe over and over again does tend to speed you up the further you go if you're not going uphill. This is because the downward momentum of falling after the jump is considered and added to your horizontal acceleration. And as far as map navigation goes, if you see a side cave or any tunnel leading off of the main area, you can usually expect the third pump jack to be located in there. Sometimes it won't be, but more often than not, it is. And don't forget to sneak in some last minute deposits while the rocket is launching. One of my favorite things about Refinery is the pod falls much faster than any other mission type. While mining and egg hunts may drop pods instantly, you will have to wait on the mule to get there, and with point extraction there's the implicit minute and 30-second cooldown before the pod actually gets there. Not so with Refinery. About 20 seconds after you press the button, the pod will drop. I'm not sure why this is different from all other missions in the game, but I greatly appreciate it as it makes these missions a lot faster than the speed that they could potentially move at least. But that just about does it for Refinery. This one was a little bit more of an undertaking than the last two mission guides, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd drop a like and subscribe, or if you have any feedback, leave it down in the comments below. If you'd like to catch me live, you can find me over on Twitch. If you'd like to talk to me or any of my community members, you can find us over on Discord. And as always, thank you for watching, and have a nice day.